Hello, I'm what happens when you cheap out on a waxwork of Dave Grohl, and today we're looking at the best RPG settings of all time.
Here comes Grim.
So before we start properly, a couple of quick explanations. Yes, this is a cheap exploitation of the success of a previous top 10 video. Also, I bought this while drunk, so I'm getting some mileage out of it, and it's very cold here in England, and this is nice and warm. Lastly, I disqualified games from this list that I'd already chosen as being the best games of all time. Here, I'm just looking at setting individually, by itself, without any other factors. And I've also disqualified any game setting that is derived from another property. So you're not going to see Star Wars, for example, on this list, or anything else that is a derivative of another intellectual property. This is all stuff that, at least to the best of my knowledge, is started in gaming. And then if there was anything else, it came later. In no particular order then, let's kick off with Degenesis, Primal Punk. Degenesis was a set of very nicely produced books with a quality level that you would normally associate with, pre-order bonuses for computer games, high-end concept art, that sort of thing. That's the kind of artwork you got from Degenesis, and the world was very involved and detailed and lore-heavy, perhaps a little bit too much on reflection, but it was hugely evocative and well realized. It was a post-apocalyptic setting after a meteorite smashes into the earth, and there's some sides to it that I don't like so much. A slight fixation on mutations and weirdness supposedly coming from this meteorite, but the rest of it I really like, and it's a shame that the whole project, the whole experiment kind of wound up. But it does mean that you can get a lot of the materials legitimately for free online. The system's not great, but the setting and the artwork and so on is really fantastic, really evocative, and really brings the setting across in a genre that has to an extent been overdone. Next we have Dark Sun, which is another post-apocalyptic setting, but in a more magical sword and sorcery, sword and sandals sort of thing. The 90s was a real renaissance for RPGs. And even though many analysts think that the diversity of settings, Dark Sun, Planescape, Spelljammer, all the rest, feel that contributed towards the death of TSR, certainly artistically, and in terms of providing role-playing materials to a more mature audience, this was where it was at. It's kind of comparable to the Iron Age in comics, or the way in which graphic novels like Sandman and so on were maturing the comic medium and bringing it to different audiences and trying to be taken seriously as art. So was the case with things like Dark Sun. And it's just, it takes D&D and it elevates it, makes it something different, makes it something dangerous and edgy and sexy, particularly with the artwork and so on from Brom. So while these other settings may have contributed to the downfall of TSR, they have remained popular. Dark Sun perhaps less so than the others due to its problematic content, but that just makes it more interesting and more impressive as a setting for a system that was looking extremely tired at this point. This is probably going to seem like a weird one. No pun intended. But Lamentations of the Flame Princess. Now, how can I say that a game with no actual setting material within it, no monster manual, nothing really in its core rules, how can I say that that has one of the best settings ever? Well, it relies on implicit setting creation, and after so many 300 to 500 page tomes, yes, guilty, out there, full of lore and information, sometimes it's just nice to get back to basics, and the way in which a lot of old games were, in that they didn't have particularly set settings and you were free to make up your own. But Lamentations does have this heavily implied setting of early modern Europe with an extreme metal aesthetic to it, and it pulls it off much better than tryhards like Morkborg do, and I have a soft spot in my heart for Morkborg, but still, the artwork, the style of writing, the examples, nothing is direct, it's all implicit. You take it all in by osmosis, but you are left at the end of reading Lamentations with quite a strong and enthusiastic sense of what it's supposed to be. SLA Industries, the post-cyberpunk RPG, it is relentlessly dark. It shares many of the same aesthetics with cyberpunk, but it was well ahead of its time in terms of things that it was talking about, despite getting a great deal of inspiration from just how grim and horrible things were here in the UK during the Thatcher years and the immediate post-Thatcher years. Most of the population is on welfare. The currency is credits, but it means credits, so you don't own anything, you've just kind of gotten it on loan from the company. Now, whether you call it SLA Industries or SLA Industries, that's up to you, but you are channeled and forced in the game into working for the company that dominates everything, playing up to the media. There's a thing called bullet tax that forces you into using melee weapons more often than you perhaps might, and so it goes. You're celebrity adventurers, basically taking missions, earning money, getting sponsorships and promotions. It is influencers as mercenaries and adventurers, and that was when the game was created many decades ago at this point. Well, perhaps not many, but enough. Yeah, fantastic and weirdly prescient, and fantastic art by Dave Alsop. Comedy is incredibly hard to pull off in role-playing games. Scratch that. Comedy is incredibly hard to pull off in role-playing games intentionally. You all bullshit around the table, make jokes, crack off colour jokes, ruin the mood, bring up Monty Python references, whatever. That happens. But a game that sets out to be comedic is rare. One that accomplishes that is incredibly rare. And with Paranoia, it's mostly to do with the setup. There's this sprawling underground city which is run by an artificial intelligence which is failing and going whatever the computer equivalent of senile is. This whole city has been sealed away from the surface due to what was detected as an attack. Not knowing what the attack might have been, the computer searched through its archives and found treaties and so on 20th century communism and assumed that communists were the bad guys. You're troubleshooters. You're there to hunt down mutants, traitors, and people who are members of secret societies. You're a mutant, you're a traitor, you're a member of a secret society, and it's just kind of slapstick chaos from there, combining elements of Brazil, 1984, but with a comedic slant. The Red Scare in America, THX 1138. All of that kind of sci-fi, Logan's Run, all of this kind of stuff. It's all in there, but it comes together in this bureaucratic, slapstick, nonsensical bun fight where any adventure that's going on is kind of incidental to the fun, but it is consistently funny. There is a thing that bugs me about a lot of game settings. Not all of them. Sometimes it's not particularly important. But a lot of games don't think through the implications of whatever technology or whatever magic or whatever technobabble or whatever else that they have included in their setting. And it's rare to encounter a game that does take that fully into account. Dark Harvest, Legacy of Frankenstein, takes the ideas present in Frankenstein and spins them out into something bigger and greater. It examines and considers the implications of a lot of the technology involved in Frankenstein. And so we have this new country, Promethea, appearing in Eastern Europe, basically run by Frankenstein technology. It's not only that you can put bits together and resurrect the dead, but those bits don't reject each other. So people who aren't dead are having things grafted to their bodies. Soldiers are having additional muscle mass, or you're picking and choosing the parts. The poor of society are donating their muscles, their organs, their limbs to richer, wealthier people. You know, the poor are being preyed upon to provide this, and Promethea is a technological powerhouse because of all this. It really thinks through the full implications of the technology on society, and that is so rare to see. And the game and the material around the game, it was kind of transmedia project, never really got the attention that it perhaps deserved. Eclipse Phase is an interesting one. To my mind, the only really successful transhuman RPG. There was Mindjammer, of course, for Star Blazer Adventures. There was also Steve Jackson Games did a transhuman RPG. I think an implementation of GURPS. I don't know. It never really got any traction. But Eclipse Phase did. It's yet another post-apocalyptic setting, but you wouldn't really know it that much in play unless you go to Earth. There has been a hard takeoff singularity. Godlike AIs are dicking around with God knows what, and what's left of humanity is in the rest of the solar system, which isn't really that bad when you think about it. But if you want to run a game like Altered Carbon, where you can swap bodies and you can jaunt around the solar system and get involved in deep technology and so on, then Eclipse Phase is probably, you know, the modern, somewhat hard science fiction setting, other than, you know, whether consciousness is transferable or not. You know, that's the sticking point. But otherwise, it's a pretty hard, pretty interesting, pretty futuristic RPG. The people who made it are kind of dicks and alienated a lot of libertarian tech bros who kind of, for this kind of game, that's a significant chunk of your audience. But still, the way they went about releasing the game and so on was interesting as well. But ultimately, it's the setting, though it is let down a bit by the rules and some other aspects. But it takes this thread of fiction and futurism and makes it work as a game, which is no small thing. yet another post-apocalyptic setting. Hot War is the sequel to Cold City, both of which use supernatural and horror metaphors to deal with the Cold War and with any potential nuclear war as well. Hot War is the aftermath of a nuclear war in England, in the United Kingdom, mostly set around London, and in the past, in the 60s or 70s. And it draws on these massive threads of, well, I say threads. Threads was the massively influential, this is what would happen after a nuclear war film that went out here in the UK. Much less positive than the ones in the US and elsewhere, that really drove home that everything would be hellish and that survivors would envy the dead, pretty much. And Hot War brings all that together, but with the metaphor of supernatural evil. Some of these aspects are things that you can fight and defeat in Hot War, which is actually more positive than the reality. But it does very much invoke its setting. It's another setting that is let down by a not particularly great rules set that doesn't particularly make a great deal of sense. We did try and play it over on Grim Streams. You can judge for yourself whether that was very successful or not, but as a setting, hugely evocative, interesting, particularly to Brits of a certain age, such as myself. When White Wolf puts out an anime-inspired fantasy game, you think that that's going to be a winner. Particularly, this was at the start of the big rise of manga and anime in the public consciousness. And what they essentially presented us was the storyteller system used for fantasy superheroes in what amounts to Rifts for anime fans, and it should have been fantastic. The setting was brilliant, the imagination behind a lot of the sights and so on, the powers and so on was all fantastic. The setting is amazing, wonderful, love it. And you think you're going to be in for this high octane, super quick, super powerful sort of game where all kinds of crazy shit's going to go off, and then you run smack bang into the system. Somehow they managed to turn one of the most simple and easily graspable game systems in existence into a huge slogfest through all the powers and everything that Exalted get. So it just ends up not producing what it promises. But the setting, everything else about it, much like with Rifts, the setting is interesting, weird, fantastic, love it. It's just not served by the entire rest of the game, or a lot of the fans of it, if truth be told. But the setting, lovely. A lot of science fiction RPGs fixate upon the grand scale and scope of the universe, and that's fine and great and dandy and all. But sometimes it's nice to focus in on something. Blue Planet is about interstellar exploration, but it is focused on a single world and its ecosystem and the politics and the conflict and the mysteries there, and it really goes into depth on all of that on a broader scale. Too late, perhaps, to cash in on Subnautica and things like that. But to me, there's always been something fascinating about the ocean and the life within it, and to have a whole game based around that and its ecosystem and everything, just taking a moment to breathe, to pause, to consider an alien world in its totality is really interesting, especially when it's taken seriously. And there's a whole subgenre of science fiction and YouTube videos and so on about speculative biology, speculative evolution now. You would think something like Blue Planet would engage with people on that same sort of level. Maybe the time is right for yet another edition that can tap into those undercurrents of curiosity and reawakening of interest in Dougal Dixon style speculative evolution. I don't know, but I like Blue Planet. That's what I think, which means this is the part of the video where I pretend that I care what you think, and I encourage you to comment with your selections or to disagree with me and fight in the comments in order to drive engagement. All hail Algorithmo. But I am genuinely kind of interested in what settings you feel that I left out that were egregious, ones you disagree with that are terrible settings, all of that kind of jazz. And of course, if you would take the time to go and watch others of my videos, that would really help too. Zang.
The Atomic Age, with its A-bombs, transistorized radios, jet engines, and a new breed of dangerous supervillain, requires heroes to face the challenge. That's where you come in. The world needs you, Agent. Agent of Swing.